Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. Hope you're having a good day. We started a new unit on fractions. And what I started doing with the kids was reviewing some of the main concepts of fractions. So one of the first things we did is we talked about how fractions represent equal parts. And so I asked the kids this question: does the shaded part of the circle represent 1/2? And we talked about that, and it does not represent 1/2 because it's not divided into equal parts, right? The fraction shaded in this shape would more be about 1/4 or 1/4. So we talked about how fractions are divided into equal parts. And then we talked about some terminology for fractions. I gave the kids a paper and we talked about how a fraction can represent a part out of a whole. So in this shape, 1/4 sections are shaded, 3/4 sections are not shaded. Or we can talk about that distance on a number line. In this number line, it's divided into 4 equal parts, and 1 section out of 4 is represented from the section A to B. We also talked about how fractions represent a part of a group. And so we talked about how this one represents 2 out of 5 are shaded, or 3 out of 5 are not shaded. The other thing we talked about are the parts of a fraction. The top number of a fraction is called the numerator, and that's the number of parts being considered. And the bottom number of a fraction is the denominator. That's the total number of parts. And then right now we're just talking about proper fractions, fractions that have a smaller numerator than denominator. After that, we did a couple of activities where I had the kids make up some fractions. So I had them look at these pictures of cookies, and I had them tell me some fractions and tell me what the numerator and denominator mean. So some kids, one student looked at this cookie and said, if you ate 2 out of the total parts, there'd be 2 out of 8 shaded, or 2 out of 8 eaten. Another student looked at the middle cookie piece and talked about how there were 4 sections and 3 out of 4 were eaten. And then another student talked about how there were 2 cookie pieces and 1 out of 2 was eaten. Now we also did an activity where we considered fractions as part of a set, and I asked them to look at these items and talk about some fractions they could make up. So some students said, you could have 4 round items that have a total of 6. 2 of the items are not perfect spheres out of the total. And one student said, there's 1 yellow ball out of the total. So just making some fractions and talking about the numerator and denominator and things like that. The next thing we did was we started looking at some pattern blocks, and we talked about how pattern blocks can represent fractions. So the yellow pattern block represents 1 whole. And if we think of the yellow pattern block as 1 whole, we could fit, if you look at the diagram, we could fit a total of 2 of these trapezoids in the yellow pattern block. And we could fit a total of 3 of these parallelograms in the yellow pattern block. And we can fit a total of 6 of these triangles in the yellow pattern block. And then we use that idea to make some fractions up. So what we did is we said, okay, what fraction of this yellow pattern block is shaded red? Well, 1 part is shaded red out of 2 parts. And then in this one, what fraction of this yellow pattern block is green? Well, 1 out of 6, because you could fit a total 6 of those triangles in the hexagon. And what fraction of the yellow pattern block has green in it this time? Well, you can fit 5 triangles in there out of 6 possible triangles, so 5 out of 6. So we just did some activities like that. Same thing here. If we look at the yellow pattern block as 1 whole, the yellow hexagon, well, how many parallelograms could you fit in there? You could fit 1 out of 3, or 1/3. In this one, you could fit 2 out of 3. And then we mixed them up a bit. I asked the kids, what fraction is shaded out of the whole in all of these situations? Well, this is a half, this is a half, this is a half. They all represent 1/2. This one as well, you could also think of as 3 out of 6. And then this situation here, I asked them, what fraction of the whole pattern block is shaded in? Well, they're all missing 1/6, right? They're all missing 1/6. So this is 5 out of 6, this is 5 out of 6, and this is 5 out of 6. So a bunch of different ways to represent 5 out of 6. And then the last one we did, what fraction of the whole is shaded in this one? Well, if you take a look, they're all missing one of these. They're all missing 1/3. So we could say that 2/3 are shaded in. Or if you look at the middle one, you might also see that it's 4/6. So after that, the last thing we did is we just did some work together on identifying some basic fractions. So what I had the kids do, I gave them this paper and we did this together. I had them practice identifying some basic fractions. So in number 1, what fraction are shaded? Well, there are 4 parts and one of them is shaded. In number 2, there are a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 parts. And 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 of them are shaded. So I had them do some fractions as part of a group or part of a whole, and then some fractions as part of a set. In this one, there are 6, 12, 18 total parts, and 7 of them are shaded. And then I also had them draw some pictures of some fractions using rectangles. So we did that one together, and then their assignment today was to do all of this paper, numbers 1 to 14, and they should do these 5 questions, the drawings on the back. So just a little basic introduction to fractions. I hope that helps. That's all for now. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.